What's good, y'all? We back, and I'm bringing y'all some late night horror stories. I'm just gonna get straight to it. I've been stalling for a minute. I'm gonna just play the video. Let's do it, y'all. Okay, volume up. Shit.
My name is Esmeralda. This happened to me when I was a sophomore in college. It was a snowy day, and I was hanging out in my sister's dorm and had just got done with my work. My sister also attends college, but lives in a campus dorm room, whereas I live off campus. Soon, it was time for me to leave, but again, there was a wild snowstorm outside. I don't like to drive in the snow because I'm not good at driving in it. So I asked my sister if she could take me, and she said yes.
I'm not going.
We got in the car and we drove up to my apartment. I stood outside smoking for a minute and got ready to go in, but I couldn't find my key. I started to look for my key and realized that I left it in my sister's room. So I called her, but there was no answer. I was so angry, but there was nothing.
That's something you don't leave. Is
I could do.
How do you leave?
So then I got a call from my neighbor, and I was so annoyed that I thought, okay, I'll just talk to her later. So then a text comes through from my neighbor that said, "If you keep making all that noise, I'm gonna report you." I was thinking that she was talking about the noise I just made after I kicked the trash can, but she texted again and was like, "Okay, I'm reporting you." So she came downstairs, and she looked horrified when she saw me standing at the door. She pushed the door open and asked me why I was making so much noise, and I asked what she was talking about as I just got here. She was always the Karen of the building. I also told her that I forgot my key in my sister's dorm. It was at this point we heard it. From down the hallway, we heard a whole bunch of commotion coming from my apartment. We looked at each other confused as to why the noise was in my empty apartment and what could be causing it. We followed the noise down the hall, and it continued to get louder and louder and louder. So I was thinking at this point, maybe it was an animal. I was thinking everything instead of what I did not want it to be. But to my surprise, when I touched the door handle, it opened. When I walked through the door, I was hit with a huge wave of heat. I instantly took my coat off and went to the thermostat to turn the heat down. It upset me even more because I was the one that had to pay rent and stuff. I looked at the carpet, and there were wet mud prints tracked all throughout my apartment leading to the bathroom. Just then, I heard something that sounded like bottles falling down to the ground, and I turned to run back out of the apartment. But as soon as I touched the door to open it, a hand grabbed my shoulder. It was wet and cold. I turned around, and to my horror, I saw an old man that looked to be in his 30s or 40s with greasy blonde hair touching me. He smiled with a grin that looked so sinister. He said in a low tone of voice, "I was waiting for you." I then began to scream, and my neighbor rushed down the stairs. While doing so, she fell down the stairs and injured herself. She got an operator on the phone while I was struggled to get him off of me, and the only weapon that I pretty much had was the perfume in my purse. I took the perfume out and I sprayed it in his eyes, and he began to yell and scream, which caused other people to come out of their apartments and see what was going on. They helped me hold him down until the police got there. When I went in my bathroom, all my pill bottles were empty and all of my drawers were ransacked. He carved the word Esmeralda over and over into my wall. How did he know my name? I had never seen this man in my life. It turned out that the man was on drugs and had actually consumed some of my prescription drugs. The man had a long rap sheet, and from what I know, he was a sex offender and also arrested on charges of armed robbery and murder. He also had a load of weapons in his coat. He had been a previous apartment owner here and made copies of his keys before giving them to the landlord after being kicked out of the complex. About 2 months later, I was stopped by police. They said that a piece of paper was covering my expiration sticker. When the officer showed me, I was horrified. The note said, Esmeralda, soon. I have since moved to another location and have not received any more notes or visits. I'm really grateful for my neighbors and for forgetting my key, because I hate to think about what would have happened if I did have my key that day.
Nah, that's crazy. That's scary. That was scary. Hey, shout out Wancy Entertainment for making that horror story. Shoot. What's up, y'all? We going back to back. I'm here with another one. If you see this man in your dream, just run away. We just gonna get straight to it.
This happened to my husband, Jack, a year
That's loud
ago.
in my ears, y'all. That's
We had a
loud.
very happy marriage. He was a nice and sweet husband to me, like a cotton candy, and at the same time, a strong man capable of defeating a lion. However, I don't remember when it began, but he was getting wasting away. Every morning, he woke up screaming and asked me if this was a dream, almost every 10 minutes. And before he fell asleep every night, he shouted like,
Oh God, please Jesus, protect me!
even though he had no religion. One day, when I asked him what's wrong with him, he whispered in my ear after looking around with a frightened face.
For the last few days, the same man's been chasing me in my dreams.
His voice was trembling.
don't even
I
know what
told
to think
him,
about this one.
Hey, Mr. Tough Guy, it's just a dream. What's so scary about it? Suddenly, his eyes got hugely dilated and he got out of breath. And he said,
You know the guy next door, Jacob? He died the other day in his sleep of a heart attack, right? Well, the night before his death, I was being chased by that man in the dream. And I fled to Jacob's house, and that man, I saw him entering Jacob's room.
Honey, what do you
that's
mean?
scary.
I asked. Then Jack said,
Jacob was killed by that man.
He started sobbing like a 10-year-old kid. A few days later, while waking up screaming again early in the morning, he fell out of bed.
Do you
Then
believe
he suddenly
somebody
rushed
just
out of the
said, like,
room. I shouted, running after him,
Or are you gonna be like,
Honey,
nah, nigga,
you are at
crazy.
home. You are safe. And Jack shouted back,
No! This is a dream! You are not my wife, you devil! I'm jumping out of this apartment and going back to the real world!
and he ran to the window and put his foot on the windowsill.
Stop him.
I ran to him at full speed and slapped him so hard in the face. Then he finally said with a shocked look,
Oh, yes. You are real.
I asked what's
Smack
really
his ass.
happening to him. And he said
Nah.
the man, this time, chased him to our house. According to Jack, the man in his dream was about 12 feet tall and his head took up almost half of the
Ooh,
height.
nah, that's
He had
scary,
3
bro.
pupils each and violet skin. When he opened his mouth, Jack saw hundreds of disgusting black teeth.
That's scary.
He was in a black suit, and his legs looked like goats. When Jack shouted to him,
You're just a nightmare!
the
In the
man
name of
said,
Jesus,
I
I plead the blood. Nah, I don't care about all that.
laughing shrilly. However, Jack said he was laughing with a crying face, which made him look creepier. While he was laughing, those hundreds of teeth made some ear-splitting sound, like hundreds of metal pieces scratching
Nah,
each
bro.
other.
Nah,
And Jack's
bro.
eardrums were so painful, as if
Nah.
those were about to be torn.
Nah, bro.
Extremely frightened, Jack started running away as fast as his legs could carry him. The man also
It's so
started
loud
running
in my
after
ears,
Jack,
bro.
shouting like,
Oh, death! Death is beautiful! Beautiful death!
All right, his
It made
voice
Jack
makes me
extremely
like,
paralyzed
okay,
by
this shit
fear.
fake.
Jack's legs were wobbling and turning to jelly. He kept falling down on the ground, but tried to run and run as if his life completely depended on it. Finally, the man came up to him right under his nose and opened his mouth, shouting,
"Death is beautiful!"
At that moment, Jack bit his own tongue and, luckily, woke up from the dream. When he was awakened, he was terribly bleeding from the tongue and taken to the hospital right away. But even the doctor couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. After long hesitation, we this time visited a shaman. However, as soon as the shaman saw Jack, she shouted with a deathly pale face, "You met him!" I cried on my knees and desperately begged for help. Clicking her tongue, she closed her eyes. After thinking deeply for a while, she opened her lips to speak. "Listen, this is what you must do from tonight. First, sleep in somewhere else you've never been. You must not tell anybody where you are, even your family or friends. Second, before going to bed, put on clown makeup. He must not recognize your face. Third, if he chases you in your dream, just run away. That's the only way you can survive. Do not go into any other person's place, otherwise innocent one will be killed because of you. Run until you reach the river or sea. He cannot swim. Don't even think of going up to a high place. He is faster on the stairs." After saying like this,
Give me a second. Oh, you missed me?
clown makeup on. Surprisingly,
Hopefully y'all
the
get
man
this
didn't
video.
appear in the dream on that night. The next day, Jack was deeply relieved and trying to sleep in the motel again. However, that night, Jack had a dream again of the man. He opened the door and entered the room, but he didn't recognize Jack in clown makeup. Tilting his head, he just kept staring at Jack. Jack slowly got out of there and kept walking away to escape, and the man also followed him for hours, still confused. Then, all of a sudden, he shouted,
"There you are!"
and started running after him at full speed. My husband had to run away again all night long. That way, there was no way to stop the nightmare.
Like the Heisman.
Next morning, Jack became unable to walk on his own and was taken to hospital again. The doctor said,
"Geez, how long did you run? All your leg joints and muscles are broken. You're gonna have to use a wheelchair for quite a while."
The next night, Jack had to run on a wheelchair for his life in the dream, and when he woke up in the next morning, he became unable to move his arms at all because the arm muscles were entirely broken. Now, there was no option for him but to be hospitalized. Since that day, Jack desperately had struggled to stay awake. Although the doctor kept asking to sleep and rest for recovery, he just drank a lot of coffee to keep himself awake. He had stayed up all through the night every day. On the third day without sleep, his health looked far worse. He even started kicking up a rumpus in the hospital, freaking out with fear and anxiety. My poor Jack begged the doctor to stop dreaming, on his knees. The doctor injected a tranquilizer, saying,
"This should put you in a deep sleep, without dreaming."
Jack grabbed the doctor by the collar and screamed,
"If I sleep, I'm going to die!"
drifting
Can't be
off to
good.
sleep. Looking at him asleep, the doctor said,
"Ma'am, your husband is severely mentally deranged. He will receive treatment in the psych ward tomorrow."
Then he left the room. And the next day, just an unbelievable thing happened. In the morning, Jack was found on the floor right next to his bed. He was dead, and his body was already ice cold. He was curled up as if he was attacked hard by something. And what I found on his body was hundreds of red spots, and all of the joints of his arms and legs terribly broken. His tongue was also cut off. The doctor got embarrassed because he could not find a single clue, because Jack was healthy and didn't
Yeah.
have any illness, as even I had no idea what killed him. One thing I could
mean, it
think
ain't the
of
doctor's
was
fault.
that dream. Until now, there are so many questions in my mind that I could never solve. Who was that man, and why? For what reason he showed up in Jack's dream? Everything still remains
I'm
mysterious.
scared, y'all.
If you see this man in your
If you
dream,
can't tell,
run.
I'm
Just
scared.
run away. And
I ain't
never,
scared. I ain't
ever
scared of this
get
shit.
caught.
Man, we might do this more often. I kind of like the horror videos, horror shorts, animated shorts, and things of that nature. You know what I'm saying? And things of that nature. We out.